Hey everyone, in this video, let's talk about how we can start sending messages programmatically using the Twilio API and WayScript. We'll dive into an example, and I'll show you how we can further extend that example and build our own API at the end of the video. Let's get started. Getting started, let's say that I'm building a tool for my coworkers and myself to allow them to send messages via Twilio. What we'll need to do if we're not using some type of system that has user management built in, we would have to go through Twilio and create API keys for each member of our team because people leave or we need new keys and need to revoke access on old ones. But what we can do instead is we can have one key, and as the system administrator, I can take care of that key inside of WayScript, which provides that user management system. All of that may not make too much sense at the moment, but I'll show you what I'm talking about as we go through this. So WayScript not only provides environments, but it also gives us a place to take care of user management. Because of that, we're using WayScript to make this easier for us. So what we're doing here is creating a layer, and we can say something like Twilio API service, and we'll create this. You can name yours whatever, it doesn't matter. And what this does is it throws us into an environment where we get a terminal, a file manager, and we can start coding in the built-in code editor. So this environment will work as our dev state environment. And once we finish, we'll be sure to deploy this to prod so we can continue making changes while still having our tool available to anyone who needs it. Starting off, I just want to show you how we can send a message via Twilio. What I'll do is I'll create a new file, and I will say something like Twilio send message.py. You can name your Python file anything, of course, and I will zoom in a little bit. I'm not going to deviate too much from the Twilio example of how to send a message in Python in their documentation, and I'll be sure to link that down below. But just going through that step by step, we have a few dependencies. So we'll use OS to get environment variables that we can store inside of WayScript, which is another feature. And we'll use the Twilio client to send the message. As we put dependencies in our Python script, we'll be sure to create a requirements and place those in here as well. We'll be using Flask in this tutorial, so I'll go ahead and put that in as well. So now that we have those, what we need to do is we need to go to Twilio and get our authentication. You see, this is mine, and I have my phone number here. So what we'll do is we'll use a secrets management system already built into WayScript. We'll click this plus and .secrets. This is the same thing as setting environment variables on your machine. It's just an easier way for us to view them all within one file, and we can make changes as we need to. So to use Twilio's API, we need something called an SID, and that comes from here. We will copy this and paste it in. Once we have that, we'll click add secret, and now we need one more. This is our auth, and we'll do the same thing. We'll copy it and paste it in. Now that we have those, we'll be sure to refresh our layer. And what that does is we'll load those into our Docker container that's working behind the scenes. So we have our secrets in place, and now we just need to send the message via Twilio with Python. From their documentation, this is the code to do that. What we're doing here is we're just creating a message using the Twilio client, which we're creating here using this import. And we will need to import our secrets into this to create our client. So to do that, just like how we would locally, we'll say account SID, and then we do the same thing. So os.environ.get, and then whatever we name that secret. I believe ours was just SID, and it was. So we will use that here. We'll do the same thing for the auth token. So environ.get, and ours was just called auth. Perfect. So we've already set up secrets, and now we can just send a message to whoever we want. I will put my phone number here, and I'm going to exclude it from the video for obvious reasons, but I'll show you the message that I get using this script. Now that we have all of this set up, we can execute our Python script using the built-in terminal. The first thing that we will need to do is to install, so we'll use pip to do that, our requirements file. And after a few seconds, you see that it has loaded our requirements. And now we can just execute our Python script by saying Python and then the name of the script. So Twilio send message.py. And you see that we get the return of the message.sid, and I have gotten a message on my phone, which I will show you, which I will pop up on the screen right now. So if you just wanted to see how to send messages and use WayScript to store your environment variables, we're already done. But now, back to that point that I made in the very beginning, let's say that we want to create a tool to allow our teammates to send messages. This is a little bit more complex because we can do this a couple of ways. We can do this programmatically, where they send a request to an endpoint that we create to send the message, like how we would using their API if everyone had their own auth keys. Or we could create a form that allows people to submit via some website. In this example, I'll show you how to create the API where we don't have to assign everybody keys, but if you're interested in the form, please let me know and I'll be happy to make that video too. So to create some type of API that allows people to hit that endpoint and send their own messages, what we'll need is some framework to do that. A simple framework for microservices such as this one is called Flask. So we will use a Flask application to make it easier. By default, we'll name this app.py. In our app.py, we will have some dependencies, and we'll start out by creating our Flask application. We'll need the same dependencies to send the message and also Flask and request. So once we have those, I will continue to copy these over, but I will explain them as we copy them in. So what we're doing, how Flask works, is we can create something called a route. So when the user visits this endpoint, then this function is executed. At this specific endpoint, we're just going to the home page and we're accepting get and post methods. If the user sends us a post, what we want to do is to send the text message with the information in that post request. We already know that we will need our Twilio credentials to do this, so I will paste those in. These next few lines are completely optional. It's just a little bit of error handling if we want to use it. And then we'll just use some of the same code that we had previously. So I will paste these in, and all we're saying is the same thing. We're creating that client, and then when the user sends us a to, then we can use that to send the message to them and the body of the message. So now that we have all of this set up, we will return that we have sent the message. Our final line will just be when app.py is called, we want this file to deploy our application. So I will paste that at the bottom. Perfect. So we've already set up an API, and all this code will be linked down below too. If I move too quick through any of this, I'll go back and comment everything that I can to make it easier to understand as well. So now we have our API set up and we just need to deploy it. Deploying in WayScript is super easy. We can click on the .triggers file, which should by default already be in your layer. We'll click on deploy, and now our command to run just looks like this. This will be in the description too, so don't worry. But we're just saying Flask run, we're choosing a port, and we're exposing it outside of the Docker container. Now, finally, we will say A80 to match this port number, and we will click on test. So now what this has done is deployed this so other people on our team can hit it. Now this is pretty cool because we only have one key and we don't have to create keys for everybody new that joins our organization. Instead, I can control it all from this one central location and make sure that my key is valid, and I can revoke it as soon as I need to. At this point, instead of relying on Twilio keys, what we're doing is we're relying on the WayScript user management system. And by default, each time you deploy, you can see it over here in the endpoints section. You see that our endpoints are private just to the members of our workspace. That means that if you have other members in your workspace, they can use their own WayScript application key and use our tools. Of course, we can make this public, but you probably don't want to make your private API key services public. So we'll keep this private, and I'll show you how other members of your team can hit this endpoint. So we have all of this set up. And now finally, what we'll do is we will deploy this to prod. We'll click on deploy and create this as a prod environment. And now in a local text editor, we're going to send a post request with our information to our brand new endpoint. You see here that we need a key in our authorization, and this is our key to our WayScript workspace. To show you where to get that, we will go to home, and then we'll click on settings, then application keys, and here is your key. Finally, we'll send that information using my local Python script, executing it like normal. After I ran this, I saw that I had a few small errors in my code that I was able to debug through the WayScript interface. And just to show you those, that way if you copied my code exactly, all it was is that This was called account SID instead of just SID, and this was account auth instead of auth. But once I made sure that all of those were named correctly, you see in our terminal that we have sent that message, and I will pop it up again on the screen. What this means is as other people join my workspace, they have immediate access to the tools that I've built, and they only need the WayScript credentials to access it. So as you start using more and more services and create more complex tools, you no longer have to worry about the API keys of all those different services. Instead, you can leverage the WayScript user management system and everyone have access to tools from day one. If you have any questions about anything we've done in this video, we'll be happy to help you out. Until next time.